Also breaking just moments ago, Judge Juan Merchan has officially delayed President Trump's sentencing until September the 18th. It was to be July 11th next week. That comes after the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. Trump was facing possible jail time, and that decision was to be made and announced next week, just days before he is set to accept the GOP nomination. So let's talk about all of this breaking news, both from the White House and from the judge here in New York. We want to bring in independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Mr. Kennedy, good to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Let me start with what we just heard from the White House. And, you know, there was a lot of discussion about wanting to be very clear and understanding the president's age and all of the factors around it. And at one point, Karine Jean-Pierre said very simply, he can do the job. He can. And that is the question, right? Can he do the job? Not what did he do last month or the year before. As you listen to this, what is your take?
I have a couple of takes. One is, if you know, the White House position is that President Biden had a bad night, he had a bad 90 minutes. That certainly is possible. If that's true, then the way to dispel that is to do a lot of interviews, a lot of unscripted debates, town halls, places where we're not insiders, but the public can actually make their own assessment of the president and his cognitive capacity. The other thing is that, you know, 90 minutes, yeah, that's bad to debate. That's bad for a debate. But what we saw there was alarming, because this is the man who's going to be possibly woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning and have to make a decision within 6 minutes of waking up about whether to retaliate, whether to send a missile barrage onto the Russians, at a time when he's being pushed through tunnels and corridors by 6 Secret Service agents, and he's going to have to think clearly. So we need a president who's going to be thinking all the time. And then the last thing I would say is that Karine keeps leaning on the fact, okay, he doesn't have to be that cognitively able because he has a great record. But Americans are looking at this record, and they're seeing the highest inflation since the 70s. They're seeing the largest debt, an absolutely ruinous level of debt. They're seeing this division in our country that's tearing our country apart. They're seeing a war that we're losing in Ukraine that this president got us into. And they're seeing the whole world turn against America, with BRICS rising and the potential destruction of the American dollar as the global reserve currency, the global safe haven, the global trade currency, which will be like a nuclear bomb hitting our economy. You have Americans who have sticker shock every time they're going to a grocery store. You're seeing, right, all of these issues that are about affordability, that nobody can get in a house anymore. This is not a good record. And the Sinaloa drug cartel has been given the authority over America's immigration policy. These are not good records. So I think the president can't afford to just stand on that record without debating it. He says, well, we've done 40 debates since the beginning of the year. I do 40 debates a week. I do 40, interviews a week, and not with curated, on my side journalists, with people who are going to challenge me, which is good, which is what we need in a democracy. And I think it's important that the president gets that experience.
Let me ask you, it's interesting to me historically, because your father ran, when LBJ saw the traction that your father was getting in his primary, and LBJ dropped out of the race. So these are huge dramatic moments that happen in history. Another one that I remember that had Kennedy impact was when Caroline Kennedy backed Barack Obama over Hillary Clinton. And that moment was a big swing. It was a shift in that race in many ways. Your family, as has been quite clear, you say you all love each other, you have great family relationships, but you don't agree on your candidacy. Do you think that your family will come out and speak, having openly backed President Biden, and say that it's time for him to step aside? Do you expect that to come from anyone in your family in the near future?
I don't know. I mean, on the family listserv, I think there was, this week, there was real shock. People during the debate were texting each other, people who are very, very strongly, the strongest supporters of President Biden, and saying to each other, this is embarrassing, this is terrible. So I don't know. And by the way, I do want to point out that a large part of my family supports my candidacy, is working in my campaign, running states for me, et cetera. So I have a huge family, and some of them clearly would rather that I not be running, at least up until now. But let's see what happens.
So what you're saying is that among the family that does support President Biden, there was serious trepidation when they saw what happened at the debate. Is that true?
Well, I didn't talk to any of them about it. I just saw the comments on the family listserv where people, I think, were shocked about the poor performance.
So, I mean, I think everybody's concerned about the future of the country at this point, right? And who is the best person to lead us? When you look at President Biden right now, do you think that it is unsafe for the country for him to be able to finish his term?
I think the country is in a more dangerous, precarious position than at any time since the Cuban Missile Crisis. We just authorized the bombing with cluster bombs, which is a war crime, of civilians on a beach in Crimea, and the U.S. is participated in that missile attack, and the Russians are actively and openly threatening to use nuclear weapons in this war, and the Russians have better nuclear weapons than us. They have more. They have 1,000 to 1,500 more.
Right.
We don't have the capacity at this time in our history to ramp up to fight that kind of war because we've given away our industrial base to China. We had the industrial base in the 1930s, and we could gear it up and produce material for the war. Today, the Chinese own that base, and we can't build anything in this country anymore. So we still are in the mindset that we dominate the globe, but it all depends on the industrial base. You cannot dominate the globe like we're pretending to do, like President Biden thinks that he's doing.
Okay.
I think it's delusion, and I think we need a president who's actually looking at reality and is trying to adjust our reality to the facts.
Okay. Stepping off that topic for a moment, there's this Vanity Fair story. I want to give you an opportunity to address it. That has a picture of you holding up what looks like a carcass of a dog and pretending to take a bite out of it. It's getting a lot of attention. So I want to ask you if you want to explain that photo. Is that a cheap fake? Is that a real photo? What was going on there?
Now, that is a real photo. It's of me at a campfire in Patagonia on the Fulefu River eating a goat, which is what we eat down there. Vanity Fair said that they talked to veterinarians who assured them that it was a dog, that they had meta-analysis that showed that it was in Korea and that it was in Korea of me eating a dog, and that statement is emblematic of the entire article, of the lack of sort of journalistic standards throughout that article.
Okay. I'm glad we gave you the opportunity to address that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., hope to speak with you again soon. We'll keep an eye on these polls. We'll see if anything is shifting given all of these very fast-moving dynamics in this race. Thank you very much, Mr. Kennedy. Good to see you as always.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.